We're about news, commentary, conversations, truth, liberty, and God. We stand for American values and our flag. We believe that the Constitution is a document that fortifies rights already given to us by our Creator. We will not apologize for our love of God and country, ever. We are Right America Media.
All right, just a reminder, the opinions expressed here on Granite State Live are those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of Right America. Look at our producer just grinning, because now he gets plausible deniability. We say it, we get the flack, and you're the guy that walks away smelling like I don't know, whatever. There's our disclaimer. As always, I love that disclaimer. Welcome to a brand new edition of Granite State Live on this, the 11th day of November, 2024. I'm your host, Keith Hansen, the unapologetic contrarian conservative, never apologizing for my toxic white masculinity. I was born this way, folks, and as such, it is considered by doctors to be a pre-existing condition. Heavily armed, as always, never apologizing for my Christian faith. Our call-in number, if you'd like to be a part of tonight's program, make that nice and easy for you. I'm giving out the wrong area code. 833-603-8255. That's 833-603-TALK. And if you'd like to be a part of the program via video, just send an email to granitestatelive@gmail.com. Put the words video link into the subject line, and the production team will get that out to you lickety-split. If you are Democrat Ray Buckley, then you might want to call in tonight, Ray, because, well, not that you ever would. If you're, what's his name? Timmy. I'm drawing a blank on his name. I need more coffee. Timmy, the state rep. Timmy, Vagina Hat. Timmy.
Tim Horrigan.
Tim Horrigan. Hey, Timmy, give us a jingle. You're gonna want to talk about this one tonight. We have got a great show coming up for you. We're going to be talking about Barry Lawton. Do you know who Barry Lawton is? Barry Lawton is the transgendered New Hampshire state representative who is now a convicted sex offender who is looking at 30 years in prison.
And on that note, hi, I'm Julian Aceyard, Blue Collar Intellectual, and today's episode will be sponsored by and fueled by the souls of dead babies, broken marriages, and Prozac, brought to you. Nah, I'm just kidding. That's Call Her Daddy podcast in the Democrat Party. Today's episode is actually going to be fueled by copious amounts of caffeine and liberal tears. And I'm Julian Aceyard, the Blue Collar Intellectual, here to shatter your preconceived notions, brought to you by the mainstream media and every one of your shit influencers that keep lying to you for profit.
I owe you an apology. I got into a role, and I forgot to give you your segue.
No, I'm good.
I humbly apologize to you.
No, that just came off the top of my head. I was like, this is perfect.
I just went into a role, and I was so excited. I was so excited to see that New Hampshire Journal dead-named Stacy Lawton. Now, you may be confused. Who is this Barry Lawton? Barry Lawton is Stacy Lawton.
Yep.
One, can we pull a picture of this degenerate piece of shit and put this up on the screen, please? Because I want people to see. All right, so that is, what a sexy Oh my God, that just churns my
Dude
stomach.
looks like a lady.
I don't think that when Aerosmith wrote that song, this is what they had in mind. So
No,
you are
it's
looking
funny,
right
'cause
now
I just
at.
finished watching Miss Doubtfire too.
But that was good, though, right?
Yeah.
that was good.
Yeah, Robin Williams is fantastic.
So, Stacey Lawton was born Barry Lawton. New Hampshire state representative, a Democrat. So I'm going to read directly from, this is from New Hampshire Journal. Former Democrat lawmaker Stacey Marie Lawton, born Barry Lawton. So we are going to dead name this piece of shit because this thing does not deserve respect. And we're going to get into this. By the way, if you have kids and they're watching this, you might want to have them leave the room for the first segment because we're going to use this thing's own words. And trust me, you don't want to have your kids around when we read the transcripts. So Lawton, who made history as the nation's first transgendered state representative, is set to make history again as the state's first legislator to spend decades behind bars on federal child pornography convictions. Lawton, 41, took the plea deal last week in the sickening case that's kept him behind bars since 2023. Lawton could now get 30 years in prison after pleading guilty to possessing child sex abuse images provided by its ex-girlfriend and co-defendant, Lindsay Groves. Groves entered into her own plea agreement last month, admitting to sending Lawton explicit photographs of children she was supposed to be minding at the Massachusetts daycare center where she worked. Now, this was down in Tyngsboro, Massachusetts. The couple is now set to be sentenced in February in the federal court in Boston. Lawton and Groves made a messy history as a couple, along with their horrific sexual tastes. According to the court records, Lawton repeatedly tried to get Groves fired from her daycare job during a 2022 breakup, claiming Groves was a pedophile. Pot, meet kettle. Lawton reported Groves to the police and additionally used social media and radio program to accuse Groves of pedophilia. Those 2022 accusations were deemed false and ended up being part of a November 22 stalking case against Lawton that landed the Nashua politician behind bars weeks after his election to the House. Democrats waited weeks to finally push Lawton to resign his seat that December. But a year after Lawton's accusations were seemingly discounted, the pair were arrested for actual pedophilia. And according to court records, Groves had been texting Lawton nude photographs of children from her daycare in the spring of 2022 as Lawton mused about child rape.
What a disgusting piece of shit.
Well, this is going to get better. And again, you don't want to have your kids, if you have kids around or if you're watching this program and you have kids, you're really not going to want to have them up. Can we get this? Can we get the first screenshot up here? So the very first one, this, by the way, is an exchange between Lawton and Groves. Now, let me set this up for you here real quick. Groves, who is an actual biological female, was in a sexual relationship with Barry Lawton, a.k.a. Stacey. Okay? So they were involved in this sexual relationship. Groves was an employee at a daycare center in Tyngsboro where she had unfettered access to children, basically a year, 2 years, 3 years old. Groves was taking very inappropriate photographs of children, and she was selecting the times that the children were going to the bathroom. Because if she took photographs of children when they were taking their pants off, putting their pants back on, it would be less suspicious and less likely to have attention called to that than if, she were pulling these kids out and just bringing them into a room and having them take their clothes off. Again, this is the kind of stuff that makes you really, really question humanity and makes you wonder why somebody like that isn't going feet first into the wood chipper. You'll understand at the end of this. So Lawton is soliciting the photographs from Groves, and Groves is sending photographs to Lawton. And then, of course, there are substantiating and supporting text messages here that go along with this. So I'm going to pull this up. I have these screenshot, and this is exactly what I had sent to Juan earlier today. So the very, very first screenshot. Now, this, by the way, is from the affidavit from the Homeland Security investigator. So the very, very first one starts off, and you'll notice at the very top, it says that they were in the last days of their relationship. Their relationship ends as of June 16th, 2023. Groves, I'm horny right now. Lawton, I was asking because I know we've had some back and forth, and I know we initially said we'd do nothing with kids ever again. All right, stop right there. Doing something with kids ever again. Julian, if I asked you, what does that imply?
That they had done something with kids.
That they had done something with kids.
Yep.
Okay.
It's an admission.
That is an admission. That is a de facto admission that something has happened. Okay. I've never used illegal drugs, so I can't say, well, I'm never going to use illegal drugs again because I've never done it to begin with.
Exactly.
Okay. So when somebody says, I know we initially said we'd do nothing with kids ever again, that implies that something was done with kids. And you said you were afraid that if we had kids, if they would go back and tell the parents the same with the kids you work with. Of course, this is a text message, so I'm trying to read this as closely as I can here. When I was trying to ask you, do you seriously see no problem with sex with children? Like I had always wanted to put my dick inside one of the little girls you work with. But you said they were too little. And then you said I could, so I don't know. I know you're horny. I'm trying to get clean, and I already have the hot water running baby. Groves says, I want to do it with the kids at work. Groves then continues on to say, then you can put your dick inside them. Groves, I wasn't being serious about the kids running back and telling their parents. Plus, I want to do it with kids who used to come here because they can enjoy it. Lawton, well, I know, but you were afraid that the kids at work might tell their parents, and we said we would do it if we knew we weren't going to get caught, and I was just wondering, like basically, you have no problem with that. Groves, you mentioned how I said I was afraid that the kids will run to the parents if we do it with them. I wasn't being serious. Lawton, okay, because I get concerned about that cause. I don't want to get caught if we do. Groves, I was joking anyway, and you took me seriously. Lawton, oh, I know, but I just don't want to get in trouble. I mean, I do want to do what we want because we like it, and we approve of it, but others think that this is wrong. And reading, insert commentary. No, you degenerate piece of pedophile shit. It's not that other people think that it's wrong.
It is wrong.
Other people recognize that it is the most evil of depraved actions, preying on a child. And that child, if they are touched, molested, assaulted in any way by some degenerate like you, will carry that, consciously or subconsciously, for the rest of their lives. Continuing. Lots of parents don't like people touching their kids. You're damn right. In fact, New Hampshire Use of Force Statutes, Chapter 627, Paragraph 4, Section 2. One of the permitted use of deadly force considerations is a forcible sex offense. So if somebody is molesting your child, shoot them, because that's what they deserve. But I digress. Lots of parents don't like people touching their kids. You know what? Don't shoot them. Beat them to death with your bare hands. They don't deserve it. And then piss on them, because that's what they deserve. I despise, Julian, I despise these people more than any other category of human beings. They're not even human. I will dehumanize people who victimize children.
It is the most disgusting thing you could possibly do, and the fact that this conversation was even had between two people and somebody who ended up becoming a state rep, and the fact that the Democrat Party was so reticent to get rid of them in the first place. And you find this becoming more and more consistent among this new transformer population, that you always seem to find it heading in one direction, right? It's always these dudes that transition into being girls, and the idea that there should be no guards on sexual deviancy whatsoever, that anything goes. That in this, the reason we're here right now is, once again, unfettered validation and affirmation. The idea that if you feel it, you should be able to do it. Therefore, we stopped calling child molesters and child predators exactly what they fucking are, absolute degenerates. Instead, we started calling them minor attracted persons, as if this is something that should be humored as a part of polite society or society in general. No, you should be hauled out, you should be beaten. In prison, they would take care of you.
Well, I'm sure that, Lawton and Groves, I mean, now, obviously, Groves, being a biological female, is going to go to a female prison. Barry Lawton is not going to fare so well. But of course, you know that there's going to be, the prison classification system is going to have a legal obligation to protect him from other people who would want to do him harm. And I guarantee you that when this thing hauls its degenerate ass into a prison, trust me, they are going to be taking bets on who gets him. This guy winds up going to prison for 30 years. You know what? Good. Because the next 30 years of your life are going to be an absolute living hell. Where you're sleeping with one eye open, and the time that you do happen to be awake, you're going to be constantly looking over your shoulder, wondering when that shiv is going to wind up getting shoved into your neck.
I don't know about that, because you remember, didn't we just had Leah Cushman on a couple weeks ago, who basically explained that the New Hampshire friggin' family court system handed over custody to a child sex offender and child abuser. So not just someone who physically abused children, but someone who also engaged in illicit sexual activity with minors. And had spent all of their fun time at amusement parks and birthday parties and places where kids congregate, in schools, in school plays, in fun family activities all around New Hampshire. Every single day since being let out. And that dude was initially convicted on a 20-year sentence, but got paroled because New Hampshire doesn't take this shit seriously.
Well, in a case like this, I tell you exactly what's going to wind up happening. That Lawton is going to wind up serving his sentence outside of the state of New Hampshire. He's going to go somewhere else, and they're going to put him in administrative segregation. This is what happened at Adam Montgomery. Okay, same thing. I think he's in North Carolina right now. He's not in the Concord Men's Correctional Facility in Concord. He's in North Carolina.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of people who would love to take a chunk out of his ass in prison.
Well, you know what? You remember there was a video that went viral of an inmate being hauled out of, I think it was, the guy was serving life in prison. Got hauled back into court because he killed his cellmate who kept bragging about molesting kids. And the guy told him to stop or he's going to kill him. And he ended up beating him to death. If I remember correctly. I could only hope that something happens to this sick, degenerate prick and his female counterpart equally as brutal. And you know what? If it does, whatever inmate ends up doing it, I'll send you a fruit basket.
Whoever takes this guy out in prison, let me know. $250 I'll put on your commissary. All right, go to page 9 of the affidavit, if you would, please. Juan, if you have that one. Do we have that one? Okay, there we go. All right, so it continues on here. And if you're not already appalled, I want to read this because I want this emphasized. I want you to understand this is what your Democrat Party supports. And you know why they support that? Because their leader did the exact same thing in teenage chat rooms on MySpace. That's right, Ray Buckley. Let's talk about how you were chasing after underage boys on MySpace. Let's talk about the child pornography that you got caught with. But because of your position, you never wound up going to prison. I want to continue this.
Quick disclaimer: we are not actually going to send a fruit basket or money to a commissary to put out a hit on some random on a degenerate criminal, because we're not frickin' criminals. But we are pissed off and would like to beat the life out of this bastard ourselves.
Lawton, quote, "So you would let me fuck the little girls that you work with?" These are 2 and 3 and 4-year-old girls. Quote, "And you're not screenshotting this and possibly use it against me, like we're all both on the same page. We both want to do this, and he would let me put my dick inside those little girls. I mean, what if my dick is too big? I mean, it's big, but it's not that big. I think you could fit in there, and if it doesn't fit all the way, then I could stop. I don't want to hurt them." Groves, "If they want your dick inside them." Lawton, would you let the little girls suck my dick?" Groves, "It's their choice." On or about June 13th at 6:58 a.m., the following text message exchange ensues. Lawton, "Boy, it's a bummer, though I thought you were just kidding about the girls at work, but I thought that they were going to tell people and it would have been just the parents that you knew of the kids that weren't there anymore. And I also thought it would be okay to fuck them. I mean, if a dildo of my size can go in a girl that you were playing with, my dick should be able to comfortably go in the girls at work. But I guess what you said, we're only want me to rub it, so I guess that's what I'll do." Groves, "They want a dildo in them." A 2-year-old girl, that's what they want. Okay? Why are you giving me the why? Is this too much? Why is this too much? Why is this too much? People need to know this is what's happening out there. People need to know that you have people that are in elected positions that are doing this. People need to know that when they drop their kids off at a daycare center, this is what they are entrusting the care and custody of their children to. People who are exploiting these kids. And damn it, I want to see these people burn. I want to see every single person who does this burn. I want to see every single person who supports this burn. I want to see the people that are advocating for minor attracted persons burn. I want to see the people in California who are now trying to make it legal for predators to go after 14-year-old kids under the pretense that a 14-year-old child has the ability to consent. I want those people to burn. What's worse, me bringing this up, or the people that are out there doing this and protecting these people?
I'm not gonna lie. Just this entire conversation,
it's disgusting.
It just
but you know what?
It wrecks my soul.
Here's the problem: if we candy coat it and we don't stand up against it and we diminish the severity of this, then guess what? These people are permitted to continue what they do. And you have special interest groups. Ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about the LGBTQIA+, what do you think that plus becomes? What do you think that plus represents? Do you realize how long and for how many decades that the pedophile society or the pedophile groups in this country have been advocating to be embraced by the LGBT community for the purposes of protection? Think about it from this perspective. If you criticize a Muslim in this country, you're not looking at the individual aspects and the individual behaviors of that person. It becomes a sweeping indictment of the group as a whole. And then the full force of the Muslim special interest groups come now on the person who is making those allegations. It's the same thing. That the pedophiles in this country have recognized what powers the LGBT community has had, and they want those protections. They want to be legitimized, not as a criminal sexual deviancy. They want to be legitimized as a sexual preference. As a heterosexual man, I am attracted to women. That is my normal. A gay person attracted to a person of the same sex, that is their normal. And the pedophiles want to be recognized as simply having an attraction to something or a group of people that is societally and sociologically non-conventional. And they want the protections. So, yeah, are you offended? Great. Don't be pissed off at me because I'm reading somebody's words. Be pissed off at the person who is reading this. Be pissed off at the person who is writing this. Be pissed off at the person that is exchanging these text messages with somebody else for the purposes of procuring kiddie porn. And then who supports them? And who votes them into office? And who protects them? Your Democrat Party. Now, do you understand why I use the word Democrat like I would a pejorative or any other slur? Because they're degenerates. All right, well, we're going to put a wrap on that. Coming up next, the Democrats shut down why a socialist sweep should scare you. Interestingly enough, Mondami's election in New York now paving the way for a whole generation of young, stupid, vapid, brain-dead Democrats to seek their position in office. We're going to have that conversation with Drew Allen when the Granite State Live program continues. Don't go away.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for GraniteGrok, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Unleashing your humble alpha is the key factor to unlocking profound leadership, unshakable confidence, clarity of purpose, and the quality of life you dream of. As combat veterans and military leaders Stephen Kuhn and Lane Ballone decode how you can master your life, conquer everything that stands in your way, improve your ability to cope with stress, and run toward greatness. You can find Unleash Your Humble Alpha on Amazon.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive. And I raise my hands to the sky, what a feeling, time to feel it. This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
Hollywood has sold its soul with woke agendas, hypocritical elites, and a culture in ruins. But one man dares to fight back. Mike Holman, the world's greatest newsman, teams up with billionaire Pierce Polk. Armed with cutting-edge AI and unlimited grit, they infiltrate Tinseltown's underbelly, expose the rot, and launch an all-out assault on the media machine. Blockbusters, written by best-selling author Scott McKay. It's a satirical thrill ride to reclaim American storytelling and disrupt the oligarchy and ignite the spark of true culture. Because some blockbusters are meant to bust the system and save the silver screen, one blockbuster at a time. You can find Blockbusters in Amazon.
Yeah, I know. Look at that. It's so sad.
Welcome back to Granite State Live on this Tuesday evening, the 11th day of November 2025. Great to have you along. I kind of wish that we had a camera for the conversation that just occurred off camera during that commercial break. So I listen, I am the unapologetic conservative contrarian. I don't care. I really don't care. Offended? Don't be offended with me. I'm just the person just telling you what happened. Be offended with the people that are actually creating it, that are thinking this way, that are perpetrating this, that are propagating this. And, you know, what was just said, we got to be careful. Juan, pop your little microphone down there. What was it? We got to be careful about the 250 on the commissary?
Yeah, somebody might actually take
500. You got it. You got it. $500, man. Think about the ramen noodles and the devil dogs that you can buy. $500. All you got to do is shiv Barry. It's a simple process. You're in for life anyway. Might as well make it count, right? All right. Well, has the shutdown officially taken place yet? I mean, is it over with yet, or is it? Are we? What are you laughing at?
Well, according to reports, apparently.
Look at him.
According to reports, apparently we have to thank Maggie Hassan and Jean Shaheen for being a part of the vote that, brought it, ended the shutdown. And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute. No. We're not going to sugarcoat this. They did what was politically expedient for as long as they could do what was politically expedient. So they held the line and they made their stand, and they got to be able to say that, they fought against the shutdown. They fought against the evil Republicans until finally they got to a point where they had to pass it because they know they're going to end up losing their seats and losing losing for the Democrats in New Hampshire. They did what was politically expedient. They didn't do it because they care about Granite Staters. They didn't do it because they care about the average American. And they had no problem putting the gun to American veterans' heads as we watch, our benefits and our paychecks and all of us. Because every time there's a government shutdown, it always comes down to, you want the government to shut down. You don't care about veterans.
Yeah.
None of you give a shit about veterans. You don't care about us anytime it's not an election season.
Well, of course, Bernie Sanders coming out saying, this is a very, very bad day. But, it's so we're at this interesting intersection juxtaposition here where, you've got the old dog Democrats, and then you have the new wave of Democrats, the ultra progressive Democrat socialists, the AOCs and the Bernie Sanders. And of course, looking at the sweeping victory, Mondami in New York. And so now you're starting to see this wave of more hardcore. They're saying the quiet part out loud. So now these hardcore socialists they're taking the mask off and they're saying, yeah, this is exactly what we are. Kind of makes me wonder whether or not this is Bernie Sanders' time. God forbid, God help us all. But the bottom line is that now you have a whole bunch of 20-somethings that have grown up with this woke leftist progressive ideology. Now they're looking at the success of Mondami in New York and saying, you know what? I want to do this too. And it's the same mindset that brought Bernie Sanders to get involved in politics anyway, becoming the mayor of Burlington, Vermont. You can't beat them, right? So join them, right? Because, yeah. I mean, hey, listen, if you can suck off the teat of government, well, why not? And it certainly has made Bernie a lot of money. So should a socialist sweep scare you? And what is the direction that this is now going to wind up taking our country? What is 2026 going to look like? What is 2028 going to look like? That's something that I think a lot of just common sense, ordinary Americans should be concerned about. Drew Allen, the millennial minister of truth, joining us. You can always catch the Drew Allen Show on Ram TV every Saturday, Sunday, and Tuesday at what a strange time to start a program, 5:15 p.m. Drew, great to see you. How you doing?
Hey, fellas, it's good to be with you, man. That was some fiery stuff, and it's good, man. I'm glad that people get to hear what these reprobates actually say. They can't hide behind. I mean, the media is not going to report on it. So anyway, I would say, whatever. Good. I'm glad you let it out there.
Well, the federal complaint in U.S. District Court, 22 pages of that nauseating, stomach churning dialogue. That's a fraction of it, Drew. But here's the thing. It's illegal for thee, but not for me. And so the concern is, and I think we can certainly look at a tie-in here, saying, well, if these types of people ascend to positions of influence and power in our government, then at what point do crimes like this now get overlooked? Hey, you know what? We've got pedophiles that are hurting kids. Yeah, but you know what? We've got conservatives being conservatives. So we have to prioritize now prosecuting and persecuting the Christians and the conservatives. We'll just, we'll leave the pedophiles to themselves because, everybody needs love.
Well, I think there's another reason I think it's great that you're airing it is because, the left wants to make perception reality. So, the left is out there constantly calling Trump a pedophile and making all these outrageous claims. They use E. Jean Carroll, who's a joke, to accuse Trump of rape and all these sorts of things without any credible evidence whatsoever. And so the media dutifully reports on that without evidence. Here you have it's not the first. You listed other ones too, but here's a prominent example. Eric Swalwell campaigned for this person, and it's the most disgusting. I mean, this is what you get the death penalty for, no doubt. For this type of behavior, and the media is not going to cover it because they want to continue this perception mirage, right? That Republicans and the right and Trump, they're the disgusting, cretins and reprobates. Meanwhile, this is happening all the time in the Democrat Party and schools around the country, to your point, and whatnot. So anyway, that's great. Take back reality.
And I want to point out that, no, on the Democrat side, if you're a part of this whole pride movement and pride parades all over the country, you don't get to run away from this and get to excuse yourself and separate yourself from this. Because you know what? In every single pride parade throughout this damn country, there are butt naked people walking down the streets in front of children, people taking children to these events, twerking in front of kids, drag queen story hours, walking people around on leather chaps and dog leashes and stuff. It is just absolutely sickening, and you're trying to normalize it, and you're trying to act like it's not happening, and you're playing in our faces and then telling us don't believe our lying eyes. We're sick of pretending like we're blind. We're not going to be polite about it. We're not going to hide from it. The fact is, you're a bunch of sick, nasty bastards, and you all need to be taken out and put a beating on you.
One thing I want to say, and I just want to address something that you said, and here's the thing. I don't have a problem with any of that, as long as it's in the privacy of your own home.
Yes.
And it doesn't involve kids.
Yes.
And that's one of the big issues that I think a lot of people have. People are like, well, you're an intolerant conservative. No, I'm not an intolerant conservative. Mm-hmm. What I believe in is decency. If you want to do whatever it is that you want to do in the privacy of your own home, you want to dress up as Ronald McDonald and get spanked, that's cool. Mm-hmm. That's fine. Awesome. It's a novelty.
Do it with a consenting adult in the privacy of your own home.
But here's the thing. Why is it so important that drag queens read to kids? Well, we have to read to... Why is it so important that you have a juvenile, prepubescent audience? Why don't you haul your drag queen ass down to your local retirement home and start reading to shut-ins and invalids and people living in retirement homes? Why? Because they would drop kick your freaky ass out of the facility. That's why. You want to have that audience with kids. And that's the first thing that you should be questioning. Why is it so important that my audience be a group of kids?
So that they can groom the next generation. Because they can't create children, so they have to groom them.
Do you remember Dexter? Not the TV show Dexter, but the little cross-dressing kid Dexter. This was a big thing about probably like 5 or 6 years ago. Was this I think it was a Puerto Rican kid in New York. He was like 6 or 7 years old. He would dress up as a drag queen. He would go into adult gay bars. And
twerk
dance
on the bar.
and dance for money.
Yep.
And adult men were shoving dollar bills into the underwear of a 7-year-old child. And mom and dad are sitting back going, oh, this is amazing, because our bank account is getting fat off of exploiting our children, exploiting that kid. That was disgusting. Now, again, I mean, if somebody wants to dress up as a woman and shake your ass and whatever, I don't care. It's not my thing. But I am not, I am neither a sheriff nor a prosecutor for the kingdom of heaven. You do what you're going to do, and you answer to your creator when you die. But if it involves children, that's where I draw the line. Drew, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that it's the predatory nature of all this, the whole trans conversation and everything else. It's about the targeting of kids, and that's what we won't stand for. And the problem is with all of this leftist ideology, it's not about getting some kind of agreement or acceptance. It's about domination. They want to dominate society, dominate the right. So, it always starts this way. The same thing with gay marriage. And look, I mean, I shouldn't even have to say this. I worked for Mark Jacobs in Italy. I was an actor. Obviously, I have plenty of gay friends, have been around gay people my whole life. And the problem with the gay marriage thing, for example, was, Christians and conservatives, traditionalists, sane people were willing to compromise and say, look, you can have a civil union, but marriage is a very specific definition that has been honored for, thousands of years. And, it is strictly between a man and a woman. So you can have a civil union and you can have those quote unquote rights that you want, but you can't get married. And they wouldn't accept that. So now it's with the trans stuff. It's, hey, if someone's 18 or older, they should have the right to chop off their penis or have a double mastectomy and, play pretend to the fullest extent that their imagination can offer them. And now it's, no, we want to indoctrinate your kids that are 4 and 5 and 6 years old, get them on puberty blockers as early as possible. Hormones that are not meant for anyone to ingest and take for a long period of time, and to have these life-altering surgeries. So yeah, no, there's a demonic nature to this, and that's why really, it's always a spiritual war. It's good versus evil, and when you bring kids into the mix, to your point, it's pure evil. Whether it's being gay or whatever else, leave the kids alone.
What I see as a consistent issue with this is, one, the use of the government in order to back this stuff, especially when it comes into the schools, right? So you're allowing a social worker, not a psychologist, not licensed to give psychological advice, not licensed to prescribe drugs. The schools can't even legally give your kids a frickin' Tylenol without your permission. But as soon as your kid says they might consider that they wanted trans or whatever, all of a sudden all that goes out the window, and we're allowing social workers, not psychologists, not able to give psychological advice, not able to prescribe drugs, to take a kid into their office and now start giving psychological advice, start prescribing drugs, and start them in the transitioning process and hide it from parents. Any other way that person were to give advice or to try to do this, they would be sitting in prison, because every time they do it, it's a felony.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I really love doing is looking back and looking at different phases of our history and trying to find the patterns that emerge. And Drew, I don't know how old you are. I don't know if you don't mind, how old are you?
38, almost 39.
Almost 39. Okay. So 38 and a half, almost 39. Because nobody ever says, I'm almost 40.
40, brother.
39 and a half, almost 40. No, but in all seriousness, so I don't know if you remember back in the early to mid 90s, there was a phenomenon that was occurring of child satanic ritual abuse. That there was, this was all the talk of that. Phil Donahue and Sally Jesse Raphael and all the daytime talk shows, they were all focusing on this topic du jour, which was more than just a du jour. It went on for probably about 5 or 6 years, where kids are now alleging that they had been abused, that parents and teachers, they have these repressed memories of being sexually abused and physically abused in satanic rituals. And Ken Lanning, who was an FBI agent, did an extensive report on this and found that, there was virtually no documented instances of this happening. But what was happening was the psychiatric community at that point in time, if you had a child who was dysregulated, if you had a child who was depressed, if you had a child who had anxiety, then it was, well, chances are that this dysregulation and anxiety is stemming from subconscious memories of having been ritually abused. And the parents and the teachers were the ones that were perpetrating this. So when you send your kid off to daycare, they're being brought down into the basement and, goats are being slaughtered in front of these kids. Or grandpa was abusing you down there. And so the psychiatric community was looking at the parents and the teachers and saying this was a problem. And it was a big thing. I encourage people to kind of look back on that and look up, 90s satanic ritual abuse. Today, now, if you're dysregulated and you have anxiety, well, it's because subconsciously you have the desire to transition out of your birth sex into another sex. And so now the psychiatrists are actually working in conjunction with the teachers and the parents to bring this about. The psychiatric community is not identifying the educators as a perpetrator of the crime. They are complicit to furthering what I would say would be a criminal enterprise, which is to get kids onto drugs, get kids into programs that are ultimately putting money into big pharma and into the psychiatric communities. Because, of course, everything with a disease model can be fixed with a drug.
Yeah, well, that's the danger of the left. I mean, it's so funny to hear them screaming about, us being fascists and all these things that they can't even define. I saw hilarious. I mean, it wasn't funny what they were doing, but a bunch of, Antifa, who I'm reliably told doesn't actually exist. Well, they showed up in Berkeley for the TPUSA event, and these people were, waving effectively the communist flag and shouting about fascism, not knowing that socialism, of course, is the root of, both of those ideologies, including Marxism. And, the left has to use the government to force their agenda down people's throat. I mean, it really is such an unholy alliance. And while they're screaming about fascism, they are the fascists. I mean, they're in bed with doctors, right? With these schools, with every entity that's necessary to groom these kids, and whether it's the transgender movement or whatever else it is. But, the difference between us and them, one of the many differences is that, for them, power is all that matters. I mean, that's their altar. And, the trans flag and transgenderism, that is a religion unto itself for these people. And so, when I hear these Christians out there that buy separation of church and state myth and all this, it's so pathetic because, the left invents this and concocts this because, if Christians just bow down and bend the knee and don't enter the fray because they think, oh, I can't allow my Christian beliefs and my philosophy to enter any decision that's made in politics. Meanwhile, Mamdani, the next caliphate's taken over, Manhattan, and he's looking forward to bringing in some more Muslim brothers in there to bring about Sharia law. So anyway, I think that people are waking up, though. You guys are participating in waking people up. The way people talk is different now. I think that we're past the political correctness for the most part.
So on the separation of church and state, as we were talking about the New Hampshire Constitution on a previous episode last week, and we had discussed how the purpose of the education system within New Hampshire was to have a moral and pious population. But that was, at the time, the education system was private. It was being run by colloquial schools, private schools, so on and so forth. There was no separation, no conflict of interest between separation church and state, as in the government establishing a church or a religion or enforcing said church or religion, until the state started to engage in taxing the populace in order to fund public education through the state. And that's consistent throughout the entire country, from what I can see throughout the history of education in this country. Once the federal government decided to once the government started funding and taxing for the purpose of a government-funded education, that is where the conflict of interest between promoting and enforcing religion as a doctrine in the United States is the government stepped into the role of education in the first place. There was no conflict of interest before that. However, in the Treaty of Tripoli, which is commonly used to reference this just separation of church and state, the reason why we had made it very clear that we were not engaging in a religious war in the Crusades when we were engaging over in the Middle East and in previous wars in the past was that we are trying not to engage as a religious factor or de facto engaging in a treaty on behalf of all religious nations or on behalf of an entire faith. That was the crux of it. The separation of church and state is more about religious freedom in the United States, but it's commonly misread, is what I'm getting at.
Well, yeah. No, and you know, there's definitely a robust conversation to be had about that. I mean, but you know, a lot of people interpret any influence of Christianity in our culture as a theocracy. That's not the definition of a theocracy at all.
Exactly.
And the separation of church and state to begin with isn't in our founding documents. It comes from a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote, to the Danbury Baptists. And the irony of it is that the Baptists were a minority congregation, and they were fearful that other more prominent Christian congregations and denominations were going to target them with taxation because they had the levers of power in the state. And Thomas Jefferson was actually reassuring them that he was going to keep the state from interfering in their religious practice, not keep religious practice from being involved in the government at all. And obviously, you know, if separation of church and state were a reality, then it's very odd that everyone from George Washington up to Abraham Lincoln, beyond that, but just to pick some prominent examples that cover at least a good swath of our history, especially closer to the founding when people were very familiar with what this fear would be, there was no example of that. I mean, George Washington in his farewell address talked about how we all had a common religion. Gee, I wonder what religion was that? Was it the mosques? Was it Islam? Was that our common religion in the U.S.? No, it wasn't. It was Christianity. And, you know, obviously Abraham Lincoln was very religious and spoke publicly about Christianity oftentimes. And so, you know, the problem is, though, what the left pretends is that they have their own theology. And it's statism, it's leftism, it's a religion unto itself. So obviously any of your political beliefs or, you know, the way you run your life, the things that drive you to make the decisions you do, morality itself, it has to come from somewhere, whether it comes from Christianity or, you know, Marxism or communism or, you know, these different isms out there. That's going to influence your decision. So, you know, Mamdani is going to be influenced by his Muslim faith. And this is the thing too. Mamdani, I think even in his kind of victory speech in New York, talked about how he was encouraging other Muslims, you know, you know, Islamophobia is over now. He's in there as the mayor of New York City, and we need more Muslims to join, you know, public service. We need more Muslims to run for government. What an odd thing to say from somebody who believes in quote unquote separation of church and state. I mean, if a Republican won a state office or a mayoral race and said, you know, we need more Christians to, you know, run for political office, obviously the left would attack that. But when Mamdani, you know, talks about the need to have more Muslims, why is that relevant, right?
I 100% agree. As a matter of fact, I would say we do need more Christians to run for office. One of my biggest contentions with the right is that for far too long, we allowed this idea of the separation of church and state to mean that no moral, Christian-informed men should be running for office or speaking openly about their faith or affecting culture in the United States, that we got too safe proselytizing amongst each other within our four walls rather than being out as Christ commands within our communities, as stewards of our communities, engaging with people and speaking truth and bringing those moral foundations into reality. And because of that, we have allowed the culture to backslide so far into degradation to where now we're looking down the barrel of absolute despotism.
Amen.
One of the questions here, we opened up talking about this, and we kind of got a little bit kind of on a tangent here. Not that that's a bad thing, because actually we covered good stuff. But again, the 20-somethings that are now looking at the success of Mamdani and saying, hey, you know what? There's clearly a message with this whole Democrat socialism thing. maybe I can get in there and do this. And there was some hope with, of course, with organizations like Turning Point USA, that they would be inspiring the next generation of young people to go out and to actually campaign based on wholesome messages of fiscal responsibility. And I mean, I'm not even going to say conservatism, just common sense approaches to government, because these people don't understand the cause and effect, Drew. I think that's the biggest thing. They don't understand that how they behave, how they act actually has a direct impact on their quality of life. But for them, they just see it's a pathway to a big dopamine hit. I mean, I'm getting a dopamine hit because all these people are telling me that I'm good and I'm worth something, and then you have all these people that are voting for me. And I mean, what disenfranchised, alienated, confused, pathless young 20-something person wouldn't look at this and go, "Hey, that's for me"? I mean, it worked for Bernie. Get kicked out of a hippie commune because you can't even carry your own weight. Leave your pregnant wife on a dirt floor, literally, and write pornographic articles for a living. But then, oh man, we discover all of the money that comes with being an elected official, run for mayor of Burlington, and hey, you know what? Not too bad. He's cruising around in a $125,000 sports car. He's got 3 houses. He's got a lake house. Guy got $1 million book advance for a book that never even sold. Pretty good racket if you can convince other people of your mindset.
Notice he's not talking about millionaires anymore. He's talking about billionaires now. Now he became a millionaire.
It's definitely a thing. Drew, I want to get you back on because I think we got to dig into this a little bit more. I think it's a fascinating concept, and I think it's one that, unfortunately, because the Republicans, again, never ever underestimate the ability of the Republicans to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. This could be a serious issue coming up in 2026 and certainly in 2028. So we're going to have to dissect this. I want to have that conversation with you in future episodes.
Appreciate you guys.
All right. Drew Allen, thank you so much. And again, you can catch Drew's program right here on Ram TV every Saturday, Sunday, and Tuesday, beginning at 5:15. Drew, God bless. Stay safe. We'll talk soon. Thank you. All right, going to take a very, very quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about why the liberal media hates the military. And should Republicans ease up on immigration? Lots and lots of controversy, especially with the immigration debate and with the activities of ICE. Kenny Webster is going to be joining us, comedian, talk show host, and proud member of the New American Right. And also, and he asks, don't hold this against him, he is a millennial. We're going to get his perspective on all that, and plus a lot more when Granite State Live continues. Don't go away.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for GraniteGrok, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Unleashing your humble alpha is the key factor to unlocking profound leadership, unshakable confidence, clarity of purpose, and the quality of life you dream of. As combat veterans and military leaders Stephen Kuhn and Lane Ballone decode how you can master your life, conquer everything that stands in your way, improve your ability to cope with stress, and run toward greatness. You can find Unleash Your Humble Alpha on Amazon.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive. And I raise my hands to the sky. What a feeling, time to feel it. This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
Hollywood has sold its soul with woke agendas, hypocritical elites, and a culture in ruins. But one man dares to fight back. Mike Holman, the world's greatest newsman, teams up with billionaire Pierce Polk. Armed with cutting-edge AI and unlimited grit, they infiltrate Tinseltown's underbelly, expose the rot, and launch an all-out assault on the media machine. Blockbusters, written by best-selling author Scott McKay. It's a satirical thrill ride to reclaim American storytelling and disrupt the oligarchy and ignite the spark of true culture. Because some blockbusters are meant to bust the system and save the silver screen, one blockbuster at a time. You can find Blockbusters in Amazon.
Yeah, I know, but just
Look at that, it's so sad.
Welcome back to Granite State Live on this Tuesday, the 11th day of November 2025, hour number 2 of the program. Great to have you along on this Tuesday evening. You know, it was I was heading down 89 southbound today, going through, it was right around Warner and Kentucook, and I was noticing that I was, of course, I'm in the southbound lane, so I've got other vehicles that are coming down, presumably from further points north than where I was going. There were some cars that had 3 inches of snow on top, oh my God. Here it is, the 11th day of November, and there are cars that are coming down with 2 and 3 inches. I mean, it looked like they had just, they clear the, how most people do it. They just clear a little peephole. It's almost like a machine gun turret. They can see through, but there's still, snow on the roof and snow on the hood. And
I am all set with that. We can just wait on the snow for a little bit, at least until I'm moved.
Yeah. Well, it was snowing most of the day. I mean, it was spitting flurries. I was out in the western part of the state, out in Cheshire County today, and it was consistently flurrying. No accumulation, but still, it was enough to remind you that, hey, you know what? Summer is definitely over. So, unfortunately. All right. Well, why does the liberal media hate the military? And should Republicans ease up on immigration? 2 topics that we wanted to get into with our guest, Kenny Webster. He's the host of Kenny Webster's Pursuit of Happiness podcast on both Spotify and iHeartRadio. Kenny, great to have you. Tell us, should Republicans ease up on immigration, or should we double down and get these people the hell out of here? What are your thoughts? Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, guys. I just unmuted my mic. You guys hear me okay? We're all good?
Perfect.
Cool. Just an FYI, I'm old school. I have a podcast, but we're on the radio down here in Texas. We're on AM radio, if you guys could, but we have a podcast. It does great, but a lot of our listeners are boomers. They're older people, and to answer your question, I think most people here in Texas agree, even though the results of the election the other day have the media, particularly the liberal media, suggesting otherwise. Easing up on immigration is not a good idea. Here in Texas, there is lots of crime and there are lots of criminals, and many of those people are connected to international narco-terror groups. And everybody's talking about the cost of housing right now in New York City. One way to lower the cost of housing would be to get rid of all the people that are not supposed to be in the country. I don't think 50-year mortgages are an awesome idea. I don't love that idea. One way to lower the cost of housing would simply be to get people that aren't supposed to be here to stop buying houses. And, alternatively, another idea would maybe get BlackRock to stop buying up all the houses in middle America, but that's another topic.
Well, I mean, here in New Hampshire, we have to deal with an issue where people basically aren't allowed to build. There are so many roadblocks that are established in trying to build housing. That's one of the biggest things, and this is nothing new. I mean, going back to 2017, the New Hampshire what's the publication, the business. Trying to blank on it now, but the New Hampshire Business Review actually did a roundtable up in where Dartmouth College is, So that was it's called the Dartmouth Lake Sunapee region. So they had a roundtable with a whole bunch of stakeholders up there. They had Dartmouth College, Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, all these, and they were trying to figure out why attracting talent to the Granite State here was such a difficult thing. And they were able to identify three key things. Number one, first and foremost, was a lack of affordable workplace housing. When people come here, you basically have two choices. You can either spend $5,000, $6,000 a month in rent, which again is fine if you're making a salary that would support a $5,000 or $6,000 a month rent payment, or you're paying $850 a month, where cockroaches and meth heads become what you're immersing yourself in. People don't want to live in Section 8 housing, but people can't afford, because the jobs that are here don't permit people. We got an open channel. We don't have the jobs that are supporting people to be able to pay, a $5,000 or $6,000 a month rent. So you have middle-aged working professionals that now have to get roommates as if they were college kids just to be able to afford housing. And try to build a house? Nope, you're not going to do that, because there are so many roadblocks in place that it makes building affordable housing for the workforce virtually impossible.
Here in Texas, people have this belief that New Hampshire is the most libertarian state. And I think it's probably Nevada. It's probably not New Hampshire. But I mean, you guys do a lot great. I don't know. I don't claim to be an expert on New Hampshire. You guys know more about it than I do. But I will tell you this, here in Houston, we don't have any zoning laws. And as imperfect as Houston is, and we have a lot of problems, one thing we don't have an issue with is expensive housing. Now, people that live in Houston will bitch and complain all the time. They'll say, oh, there's a mansion next to a church, next to a strip club, next to a crack house, next to a weed dispensary. But you know what? You could buy a 5-bedroom house here with a 3-car garage for under $500,000. And some people don't like the anti-zoning laws. I think at the end of the day, it works quite well. Houston is a little bit like a garden full of weeds. There are things growing in places where you don't like them, but everything's growing.
That's a really actually good way to look at it. I got to be honest. I kind of like that descriptor. And in fact, Houston and the lack of zoning, that was something that came up on this very program here, because there was a push by certain Republicans to eliminate local zoning and put all zoning under the control of the State House. And I mean, we're talking a unbelievably contentious discussion, where I mean, you had Republicans that we had a couple of Republican lawmakers that were literally screaming at each other, not on air, but here in this studio when we were during a commercial break, because they were so adamant about this. And one of the big concerns is that, what makes New Hampshire uniquely New Hampshire is the fact that certain things aren't allowed in certain areas. And I think, it may work for a municipality like Houston, but across the board as an entire state, would you see that as something that would necessarily work? Let's say that the same thing that was happening in Houston was now applied to the entire state of Texas. Would it work as well statewide as perhaps people have, and maybe it doesn't work, it's just become the new normal? I'll throw that up for consideration. Your thoughts? I think your mic's on mute.
Sorry about that, guys. My bad.
That's
I don't know how that happened. I don't know what the zoning laws are like in every city in Texas. I'll tell you, there's only a couple of places where housing is expensive. Austin, Dallas. I think I checked Fredericksburg. It's wine country. But other than that, for the most part, you could go. Texas is a big, wide, spread open place. And we have high property taxes. Some people complain about that, but that is actually a symptom of the fact that that houses gain value here. That if you move to an area in the state where there's not a lot of people, odds are that will change in a few years. Almost anywhere in our state is a good investment. Now, Texas isn't as much like Texas as people think it is outside of the state. But I will say that the cost of housing is one thing that I think we mostly get right, at least outside of Austin, Texas, and Dallas, which not surprisingly are controlled by the far left.
Well, before we move on, I'll just leave you with one thought here. If you want to move to the great state of New Hampshire, if you have $350,000, then you can buy yourself a very nice single-wide trailer on a half acre of property. And then on top of that, you can expect to pay $8,000 to $10,000 per year in property taxes on that single wide trailer on 1 acre of property. And that's
I have
not
a
an
buddy
exaggeration.
Yeah, I believe it. I have a buddy that grew up in London, right? He's a little older than me. And right after World War II, he was growing up in London. The place was desolate. It was in ruins. Nobody could afford to buy a car. Everybody was riding motorcycles. It was kind of the early era of like the 60s, 70s, early era British punk rock was going on in London. Street thugs, the skinheads, all that stuff. And at the time, it was very hard for him to make a living there. He dropped out of high school, went to work at Lloyd's of London with education, and weirdly, with so much with so much determination, he was able to move his business to Fort Worth, where as a young man with no education, with no formal education at least, he grew a business that amazingly, gentlemen, is now with hundreds of millions of dollars. And I asked him once, why Texas? Why of all places? He says, well, Kenny, with his thick British accent, he says, well, Kenny, I'll tell you what I like about Texas. It's right in the middle of the country. And with our very limited amount of regulations and rules, a very free entrepreneurial business environment, he was able to grow a business that grew and thrived. He went from being a poor guy that came to Texas with just a few $100s to literally being worth $500 million so many decades later. Now, one of the things he does here, and I always thought this was brilliant, you just mentioned double wides. He has a ranch like an hour outside of Fort Worth, and he has a lot of double wides on it. And he connects them together and he makes them look like mansions. But because of our weird tax laws here, you'd walk into one of these buildings and you wouldn't know it was constructed out of old trailers. They said, Richard, why did you do this? Why did you build a mansion out of double wides or triple wides or quadruple wides or whatever he calls them? He says, well, Kenny, that's the thing. It's a legal loophole. It's a way for him to make his property tax virtually non-existent. He does a lot of stuff like this. There's a beehive over there. He's got 5 sheep. He gets an ag write-off. And I know that stuff exists in every state, but in a place like Texas, if you're really smart, if you're really business savvy, you can have hundreds of acres, thousands of acres, and probably pay less than what you're paying to own property like that on the Upper East Coast in an average suburban neighborhood, simply because it's generating revenue, building jobs, and our state encourages that here.
That's actually pretty wild. Our producer just told us that we have a video of you arguing with a Marxist. Do you know what we're going to play? Okay.
All right. About a week ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Set us up for this.
Go ahead.
No. Well, set it up so that way people know what they're watching.
I'm a morning rock and roll radio show host. I do stand-up comedy. I tell dirty jokes in nightclubs. But when I'm not doing that, I'm kind of, I try to blend in. I go into the Trader Joe's. I go to the Circle K, and I just try to fit in. I live in the city. I'm in a high rise right now, and not far away from here, there's a giant park. It's about the size of half the island of Manhattan. Texas is just like that. Everything's big here. I jog around this park every day, gentlemen. I run 3 miles, 6 miles around the park, depending on how much time I have. And the other day I saw something. It was the night of the beaver moon. It was about a little less than a week ago. Weird energy in the air. I'm running around the park and I see something I never seen in the park before. Houston is generally not a hotbed for political extremism. We have that in Austin. We have it in San Antonio. In Houston, we have the oil and gas industry. It's moderate politics here. There are jobs. Most people aren't angry. You won't find people on the far left, at least not loud, outspoken members of it. So as I'm jogging around, I notice these guys are standing there handing out paper newspapers. They look a little younger than me, right? And the paper at the top, it's almost like they were AI generated communists. Their newspaper said communist across the top, and they're passing it out to nobody wants to talk to them. So I mute my headphones as I'm jogging past because I want to hear what they're saying. And they're like, billionaires, F the billionaires. And I'm within earshot. Guys, I can't resist. I tell dirty jokes for a living. So I'm like, hey, I like billionaires. Billionaires create jobs. And I just keep running. And they start screaming obscenities at me. I turn around. I stopped my headphones, and I wanted to give them a chance to not embarrass themselves. I said, are you sure you want to do this? And they said, yeah, come over here. I take out this very phone. I hit record. I was like, all right, let's see what happens. And that's where the video starts.
All right. So without further ado,
Hey, what's up? We're down here right now with a group of people who identify as socialists. Now,
Communists.
Any communists, even better. Let's count all the things the communists developed. The AK-47.
Yeah.
No, let's do it right here. No, what's the point?
our material.
You need those guys to help you? You want to talk to me? I'm doing it right now.
I'll talk to you.
Guys, I was doing something. I'm not going to follow you on an adventure. Do you want to have a
Okay,
conversation?
if you're gonna be rude,
the
then
AK-40.
I
I'm not going to be nice to you. You're a Marxist. You
Okay,
guys are the
if you're
enemy.
gonna be rude,
You
I'm
guys
not
are
gonna-
everything that's wrong with this world. You're parasites. You contribute nothing to society. You guys are bad people, right?
Okay.
Right
If
now,
you're
you're
gonna speak
you're
about us
covered
that
in
way,
clothing, created in a corporation.
I don't want to speak to you if you're
What
gonna
is this?
speak-
You guys are engaging people. You
I
don't like
wanna
this?
speak to you if
All
you're
right,
gonna
here
be
we go.
rude.
All right, here
If you wanna
comes the leader of the book club.
If you want to engage in
You guys want to talk to me.
Hey, if you want to engage in
hey.
an intellectual and
This
respectful
is-
conversation, I will have that with you. If you're going to come here and insult me, I'm not going to talk to
I'm
you.
definitely. You guys are parasites. There's no way
Okay.
we're not going to insult you.
Okay.
Parasite.
Capitalist life
We
for parasites.
please move to New York City, guys.
Suck that
Guys, it'll be
orange
great.
cock
You
that
guys.
you love so, if
What's wrong?
you want to be
You
rude,
contribute nothing.
then you can go.
You contribute nothing. No, I can stay here. This is a public
Okay,
park, right?
if you wanna
Hey,
be
how's
rude,
it going, guys?
that's up to you.
Look at this.
Hey, there's
Parasite, right? Tell me one thing that communism's contributed. There's nothing.
We're going to look at the Bolshevik Revolution.
The Bolshevik Revolution. So thousands of people killed, right? Millions, really, right? Got more than the Nazis killed, right? A great accomplishment for Marxists.
Fought the Nazis.
That's great that they did. And then what happened next?
And then what happened next?
And then they killed more people than the Nazis did.
Nazis. Killing Nazis.
Right. No, and then they killed their own people. Mao, Stalin, Lenin. These are not good guys. These are bad people,
we don't
guys.
follow Stalin or Mao.
You can
You're,
have an
guys, this is what everyone says. They say we're going to build the utopia. It's going to be different
You
this
can
time.
have an
What they're saying is,
intelligent
this is
conversation
no.
without
You cannot
insulting
put your
people.
finger in my hand.
Or
This is
what?
the
Or
benevolent
what?
dictator.
I'm
Look
putting
at
my finger
this.
in your face.
This
What are you
woman
gonna
who's
do
never
about it?
built
The fuck?
anything or designed anything or done anything in her life. She's going to create the utopia, guys. That's what every arrogant leftist leader says. And then what happens?
And it's
More
funny
death
because
than the
you're just
Nazis.
insulting. You have no intelligence.
Do you want to keep weak? Yes, of course. I'm giving you
Bye.
basic history.
Have a good
The
day.
the AK-47.
Have an
What?
amazing
The
day.
Bolshevik Revolution? That's not an accomplishment, guys. That's just violence.
We're not going to engage in bullies.
No, bullies. There's 5 of you. There's 1 of me. You wanted to talk to me, loser. Enjoy your communist newspaper. And you're incapable of having an move to New York City, guys. Find a Trader Joe's that works as well as the DMV. Enjoy.
With me, I would be more than happy to have that with you.
Lady, your IQ is lower than your body weight.
Get
What
out
would
of
be
here.
the point?
Get the fuck out.
Goodbye. Goodbye, everybody. Move to New York City, guys. You'll love it. You'll love New York City, guys.
I give you credit for wanting, I guess, to try to have a conversation. But did you expect anything less?
Oh, that was exactly what I thought was going to happen.
Okay.
I was prepared to have a polite conversation. I asked a pretty straightforward question, and her immediate response was, follow me to some pamphlets or don't be rude to me. And as soon as she said something like, F you, suck the orange, whatever,
Yeah.
they're talking about Trump. They can't defend communism, so it becomes about Trump. And I'll tell you, I'm farther to the right fiscally than Trump is. If Trump's a fiscal moderate, guys, I think he moved the Republican Party just a little to the left.
Mhm.
And weirdly, they didn't like that, so they aligned. Do you remember when they aligned themselves with Dick Cheney last year? They spent 20 years telling us Dick Cheney was a Nazi, and then the minute that Trump took over, pretty much a 90s Democrat, then 90s Democrat policies became what Nazis were. And then magically, weirdly, amazingly, they were okay with the Dick Cheney Republicans. They don't believe in anything. And when you don't believe in anything, you could say you believe in anything at the drop of a dime.
So, we've spent a lot of time talking about the evolution of this from the 1950s, early 1960s literary postmodern movement, how this has we can call it progressed, but how this has morphed into what it is today. Certainly the useful idiots, and the when you juxtapose the Maslow's hierarchy of needs up against these people. This is a person who has never done anything. I can tell you, neither one of those individuals, the beta male with the hat on or the female, most likely have accomplished nothing. They have built nothing. They have made nothing. Their net worth is probably nothing, if not negative. They're probably in debt because they don't know how government works. They don't know how money works. They don't know how the economy works. But these are people who now when they find solidarity with other people who are like-minded, they get that dopamine hit because now they're being validated and they're being told you're really good at what you do, and now they're seeing themselves and they're being put up on a pedestal as being revolutionaries and warriors. So it's feeding that need to be something more than what they are. And so I mean it's very, very typical when you look at these types of people to understand what their motivations are and what drives them to do and to be what they are. But the one thing that they're never going to do is, and this is because of the cognitive biases that they operate under, they are never going to be able to have their minds changed. Maybe at some point in time, if they have an experience that causes them to change their perspective, but they are never, ever, ever going to have a conversation with somebody and have their minds changed. They cannot deal with, and you'll notice the moment that you started to push back on her, now she resorts to name calling and innuendos, the sexual innuendos, all that. When you look at Graham's hierarchy of disagreement, what are the lowest rungs on that? Name calling, tone response, and innuendos. And they go right to that because they cannot physically and emotionally, it creates discomfort and anxiety in having their perception of reality challenged. But because they cannot explain it, they can't rationalize it, and they lack the critical thinking skills to do anything with it, they literally start to melt down. And that's what you're seeing right there.
Keith, I think you explained that in a really classy way. I just think they're dirtbags and parasites. You know, to me, these are just bad people. I'll also tell you this. I run around that park pretty quick. So when I saw them, I thought to myself, man, I could run 3 miles in a little less than 20 minutes. I wonder if they'll still be there in 20 minutes. Man, brother, I ran as fast around that park as I could to see if I could catch them one more time. They were not there. I defeated them. I don't know how I did it. I don't think I'm that. I didn't think that what I said was that revolutionary or groundbreaking or mind-blowing. In the short amount of time that I talked to them, left and came back, They gave up on whatever it was they were trying to achieve. I don't know how I did it, but
well,
just enough name calling and facts, and they went to bed after that.
You could take credit for that, or maybe it's because the text message came through. Mom told them that the hamburger helper was ready to get home because dinner was on. So, interesting thing here, and our producer Juan just threw this up on the screen. I want to have you put this up, Juan. 20-year-old communist wins Ithaca City Council seat. Hannah Schvetz, a 20-year-old Cornell student, won Ithaca's 5th Ward Common Council seat on Tuesday, defeating independent GP Zarenda. I don't want to be accused of being an anti-Semite here, but Schvetz seems to be probably a Yiddish last name. How is it that a person of presumably and ostensibly Jewish descent, it becomes a communist? Where is the disconnect here? You would imagine that going to Cornell, she's going to a pretty good school. You would think that they probably would have given her a history lesson on exactly how the Jewish people have been treated by communists throughout history. Right. But where's the disconnect here?
Yeah, if you look at what happened to Jewish people in Soviet Russia, it wasn't great, And I grew up with a lot of Jewish people. They're really into economics. I don't claim to be much of an expert on anything, but I know a lot about free market capitalism. If you see my dog walking around behind me, his name is Milton Friedman. So I'm happy to have this conversation and I grew up in the north suburbs of Chicago, not far from a place called Skokie, Illinois. They say it's the highest per capita percentage of Jewish people in a municipal government outside of Israel. So I knew a lot of people on both the right and the left, and I don't know what it is about Jewish people. Some of them like free market economics. Some of them seem to like Keynesian economics. But one thing I have found is that very rarely in a far left or far right society, whether you're talking about fascism or communism, are Jewish people treated well. They've historically never been treated well anywhere. I think as a society, we do a good job of explaining to people why fascism's bad. Mm-hmm. Communism is nothing more than left-wing fascism. That's all it is. In fact, we often make this point that, they'll say politics is left versus right or authoritarian versus libertarian. If you really think about it, it's a circle. If you go far enough to the right, you end up again back on the left. What is the far left and the far right? How different are they? They're not that different. If you think they seem to hate the same people, they seem to be, they both are obsessed with censorship. They're both obsessed with telling you capitalism's evil and the government should control the healthcare industry. And what always happens when the government gets involved in healthcare, when the government tries to regulate the economy, when the government tries to control to our speech, those things always produce much worse consequences. It's not that healthcare was perfect before the government got involved, or that people were saying things we'd all agree with, or that capitalism was perfect. But somehow, weirdly, whenever the government gets involved, it always becomes worse. And they understand that as it shifts too far to the right. They don't understand that as it shifts too far to the left. I think because as Americans or Western culture, we just have this very polarized way of looking at everything. It's either on or off. It's either black or white. It's either red or blue. But in real life, things are much more nuanced than that.
I'm just asking the producer here to kill the music here for a second, because I wanted to bring one thing up. Go ahead.
What I think is a dividing difference, and where you see a lot of people get cognitive dissonance, is but when you look at the cultural prescriptions in both fascism and communism, right? So the left, the progressive left, they want a libertine society where every amount of degeneracy is completely fair game, but they want their full communist government system. And then on the right, you want a religious based society, but they want all of the trimmings of that communist, price controlled, blah 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 blah. And that's where the disconnect is my prescription for my social prescription for society is what I want, and I'm able to recognize, the left is able to recognize the economic problems over on the fascist right, but they don't like this, and then the right is able to recognize the economic stuff over here, but we don't like the social stuff over here, and we're perfectly able to call out the problems.
It's almost as if it's like it's the buffet of government. We want a government that is exactly the way that we want it. You see that? I mean, that's a perfect way to describe Unitarian Universalism from a religious standpoint.
Yes.
I want God to be everything that I say He is. I don't want to obey God's word. I want to tell God what I think He should do, and then live according to that tenet.
Yeah.
But what was interesting in that video was the fact that Beta Male with the hat on there, he went to a very classic argument, which was, the Nazis fought against the communists. And so you hear this all the time. Well, communism must be good because it was an enemy of fascism. Well, what was the Nazi Party? It was the Democrat Socialist Workers' Party. That's the first thing. But again, that's a perfect example of an enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's why the Americans and the Soviets were able to come together to fight against the Nazis, because they had a common enemy in Hitler. Hitler was about to march across Russia and take Russia over. Russia needed, or the Soviet Union needed, the American army to defeat the Nazis. Otherwise, the Soviet Union would have become part of Hitler's map. But ultimately, what it boils down to is that, and we have to stop looking at it in terms of, well, this political party was against that party, so therefore it substantiates my argument. Ultimately, what it boils down to is the socio-political system that you are advocating, is it totalitarian or is it libertarian?
Yes.
Ultimately. Because communism, and which has never been achieved, by the way, it's just varying degrees of socialism, and fascism are all totalitarian. As conservatives, we recognize, or at least I'm going to speak purely for myself, I recognize as a conservative that the proper amount of government is the least amount of government.
Yes.
I'm not advocating for anarchy, because I recognize that there has to be some government in place. But the least amount of government is the right amount of government. I'm going to give you the final thought on that.
Right there with you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Minarchyism, right? It's not that we want total anarchy. To go back to Milton Friedman, that's what we liked about him. He once made the point that the end goal shouldn't be no rules. It should be as little rules as possible in order to achieve a society that thrives and where there's lots of opportunity for everyone. The end goal should be libertarianism. But I will make this point. In a room full of libertarians, I'm the most conservative person. In a room full of conservatives, I'm the most libertarian. If we want a society that's truly libertarian, a society where we don't have draconian laws, where we don't have gulags or the concentration camps or whatever, sadly, in order to get to that, we are going to have to deport some people. Sadly, 5% of criminals commit 95% of the crimes. We are going to have to lock up some of these repeat offenders and throw away the key and never let them out. In order to achieve libertarianism, there needs to be a light amount of authority for an era. And it's a tricky thing to produce, because in order to get into that and get out of it, how do we move into an era where we clean up society, but then have an exit strategy so that at some point society doesn't remain this police state? Sadly, we need it right now. These ICE raids, liberals won't tell you this, but here in our city, we're arresting pedophiles, child pornographers, human traffickers, and they'll pick out the one example of a person that maybe shouldn't have been detained for an hour or two longer than they should have been detained. But the vast majority of these cases are unsavory people that I think even the most unhinged person on the left would have a hard time denying doesn't belong in the country.
Kenny Webster, host of Kenny Webster's Pursuit of Happiness podcast on both Spotify and iHeartRadio. Hey, it was an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for jumping on the program today. We're going to get you back on
before
again,
I go, guys, I co-host a morning show called The Walton and Johnson Show. It's been on the radio since 1983, legendary, dozens of affiliates all over the South. Very funny. My co-host is a broadcast genius. His name's Steve Johnson. And, if you find me on X, there's links to all of our shows and stuff. You guys are awesome. I'd love to have you guys both on my afternoon show or my podcast sometimes. I love talking to you guys.
We'll definitely get that set up. Kenny Webster, God bless. Keep up the good work.
God bless, guys. Happy Veterans Day, gentlemen.
And to you as well, too. All right, we're going to take an extremely abbreviated commercial break. When we come back, we're going to check in with Chris Moore. Chris is a Republican who ran for Indianapolis mayor, also for the city council. I've had the privilege of doing Chris's show a number of times. He's the host of Your Voice, Your Call radio show, which airs every Saturday. Chris Moore, you're not going to want to miss this. He's a firecracker. Much more coming up right after this. Don't go away.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for GraniteGrok, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive. And I raise my hands to the sky. What a feeling. Time to feel it. This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
How do you know when you've made the right decision? It's the feeling you get in your gut. The one that tells you what's right or wrong. It's the one that says, sure, I can have a drink. Or the feeling that says, okay, I've been drinking. Now what? It's the voice inside you that says, I'm buzzed. Better leave the car when it's time to go. Plan ahead. Catch a sober ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
I got to admit, that is some perky bump music. I actually kind of like that. It was good. You got to get more of that stuff on. That's the kind of stuff that Chris Moore would play on the Your Voice, Your Call show. And I'm not going to do a big wind-up here on this. I am just going to set it up and then let him run with it. Chris Moore, Republican. He ran for Indianapolis mayor and Indianapolis city council, and he didn't get it, unfortunately. But he's going to, I guess he's going to do another run here soon. And I guess we can, he said, make stuff up. I can say he's an astronaut. So I guess he's an astronaut, too. Chris Moore, great to have you on. How you been, my friend?
Well, what's going on, my friend?
Now, you got a green screen on in the back there, so Juan and I were talking about all of the indecent backdrops that you could have possibly had yourself set up on.
Yeah, I know. And for some reason, it's not letting me adjust it. I had a problem with it the other night, but I've been playing around getting set. So how you doing, buddy? Been a long time no see.
It has. It's been a couple of years, probably about 2 years since I did your show last. That was actually a lot of fun. I think we were on for like an hour and a half. I think we pissed a lot of people off, which was my point. So, I mean, objective met, man. You know, hey, level unlocked, as the gamers like to say.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to have you on. You know, we got our haters and whatnot on our shows. We know that. Saturday nights, you know, we're live from 10 to midnight here, my time, and we talk about everything and anything, from UFOs to politics to whatever, and we get our haters, and we get those that like it, so whatever.
You know what? Hey, controversy, it sells. And, you know, when it comes to media impressions and marketing impressions, people don't care if people are tuning in because they like you or they don't like you. All that matters is how many people are tuning in. That's the most important thing. So, there you go.
Yeah. It kind of varies. We're on Patriot Soapbox, which they are on multiple platforms. So spread out to the platforms and all the viewers. It can range from, depending on the nights, it can range from, 2,000-3,000 on up, give or take. And then they're aftermarket shows. So, and then we try to upload our shows later on for, later views. So people can see the shows if they miss it.
I have to be honest, I mean, there's a ton of podcasts that are out there, and in my experience in broadcasting, and I don't really consider this a podcast because we're doing this live. This is not designed to be a podcast. We archive the show as a podcast, but I have to say that there's something about doing live programs where you don't get to do it over. It's not like, oh man, I screwed that up. Hey Juan, scratch that and let's take a second take on this. It's live. What you do, there's no going back. And so I think even for people that are doing, that's one of the nice things about Patriot Soapbox, is that people who are more professional podcasters can actually now get a crack at doing that live. And that's the thing that I've always loved about live programming. I mean, my morning drive show, 4 hours, Monday through Friday. If I say it, I'm responsible for it. And if I would misspeak, I would say, well, that's what happens when you do 4 hours a day of extemporaneous radio. You're bound to stumble over your words every once in a while or have a bad day, and you don't get a second take on it. So I think it's a very, very easy way. I'm not going to say easy. I'm going to say it's an efficient way of becoming a very good broadcaster because it holds your feet to the fire. You've got to perform, and you only get one take at it.
Yeah, we're live. Patriot Soapbox is a 24/7 live, and yeah, we screw up once in a while, but it can bring a little excitement. It can bring a little joy or whatnot to it as well. But overall, you're right. You got to have your feet on the ground, run with it. And I do a segment called "What's Grinding My Gears," and it's not scripted.
Mm-hmm.
So just most of the shows aren't scripted, and you don't know what's going to happen to the guests we're on. So you just got to do what you got to do.
And the nice thing is that you're not constrained by the FCC, so you can say what you want to say.
You're right on that. That's absolutely great there because the grinding my gears. Yeah, I say what I want.
I think it was a couple of times I started jumping on your show when I was doing the terrestrial radio, and I would say something and be like, oh my god, I can't believe I said. Oh, can I say? Oh, that's right. Yeah, I can say that because I don't have the constraints of the FCC on me, which is always nice, but. I digress.
Very nice.
So what's on your mind there, Kemosabe? What do you want to talk about? We got Democrats, we got the shutdown, we got the socialist sweep, we got Mondami, we've got immigration, we've got ICE. What's your pleasure?
Oh, there's so much out there, but I have to say the Mondami thing, however you pronounce his name, out there in New York, I mean, you get what you get. I see that they're saying around 5,000 Officers are retiring on the 1st of January. They did not want to be ruled into that, and and people are leaving. And he's going to push businesses away. I don't think this guy knows what he's doing, and I don't think people realize what they did by voting for that idiot, in my opinion.
So let's kind of step into the way forward machine. Let's take a glimpse into life in New York in, say, 2027, 2 years from now. What do you think the city, and I'll say it preemptively, the once great city of New York, what's it going to look like after 2 years of Mandami?
I'd say even less than that if Trump doesn't decide to say we're going to call them the Muslim Brotherhood organization of terrorist group to get them removed. But in less than 2 years, I think it might end up looking like, what they want. Women to be covered in those, I forgot they're called, those outfits, habibs or whatever. It's going to look like a third world country. It's not going to be a great city as it once was. It's not going to be that melting pot of diversity of everybody having the right to their own ideals. It's going to be individualism is going to be removed, and you're going to do what they tell you, or else. Basically,
I think I think one of the big things is you're going to see the good people are going to flee. And I think you're going to see other people who are just opportunistic. And this is one of the things. During COVID, we saw this massive influx. And as a matter of fact, was it Kelly? Was it New York City one that Kelly Ayotte was running the? She had like these banner trucks that were going back and forth. If you don't like it, move to So there's an active campaign right now by the governor of our state, Kelly Ayotte, to try to attract people from New York up here. And I got to be honest with you, we don't want them. I mean, unless you're a card-carrying Republican and your socio-political viewpoints are conservative, we don't want more blue or purple-influenced people moving to our state. We saw that. The first wave of that really came with COVID, where people were trying to get out of New York City, trying to get out of Connecticut, get out of New Jersey, and even Massachusetts. And so, cheaper real estate up here, from their perspective, made this a very attractive place to move. They move up here. They don't leave their voting habits at home. They move to New Hampshire. They continue to vote like retards. And then, yes, I said that. And then, and then they sit back and wonder why. Well, the state's becoming more like what I escaped. Right, because you keep voting for the same idiots, you idiot.
Yeah, 100% agreed. I mean, then you see some run to Florida or to Texas. But you're right. I mean, me from Vermont, I grew up there as a kid, so I love the area, know the area very well. And when you see that thing, kind of influx of retards, that's a good word to put it. It kind of, it's going to bring the state down. I mean, look who's in charge over there in Vermont, Sanders, and I'm just surprised there ain't any more retards there. If we're going to be honest. But I don't know, maybe like you said, if they left the stuff back home, and then if they move to the state, they got to realize we can't bring that with us because look what you just brought to New York now. We don't want that in our states. We don't want it here in Indiana. So, it's like, too bad. You voted for it, now you got to deal with it.
What's the socioeconomic pulse, or the sociopolitical pulse, I should say, of Indianapolis right now? Is it more left-leaning? Is it centrist? Is it what's the mindset when it comes to law enforcement, police, ICE, immigration, everything else like that by your city fathers?
Well, for those who don't know, Indiana is a red state, but we have a blue city. And our mayor is a complete imbecile, along with, and I hate to say it because I'm absolutely devastated at it. We've got 6 council members of 5 Republicans, the rest Democrats, and actually I think they're rhinos. They turned tail on everything. I really think our city is more left-leaning than anything, although I think if it came to ICE and all that, I would say that people in general be all right, but our government be like, forget it. Well, something's got to happen if things get out of control. Bottom line, I think in the blue, the way it's set up because of our inept mayor, inept prosecutor, and I'm going to say it, retarded council members. It gets really sad to realize that they turn their back on the Republican Party. Our party in this state is weak. So, there's nobody's strong anymore. They got a horrible chair who's MIA, and I don't know. More upheaval, more nonsense. It's just crazy.
People often refer to politics as this pendulum, where obviously that pendulum has to swing, and then it reaches this terminal point, and then it has no choice but to start to swing back in the opposite direction. Do you, and a lot of people looked at it and said, maybe the Democrat Party and the progressive movement was starting to peter out. Maybe that pendulum was going to start to swing back. But now when we look at the Mamdani, when we look at some of the other races that took place last Tuesday, and I think the perfect example was, the gubernatorial race in New Jersey, or the gubernatorial race in Virginia, or more appropriately in Virginia, the attorney general's race. Jay Jones wound up winning that race. Jay Jones was, of course, the person who was calling not only for the death of a political opponent several years prior, but was also specifically articulating death threats against the political opponent's wife and children. And there were many people that looked at that race as a referendum on the acceptability of political violence. Jay Jones, despite all of these transgressions, went on to win the attorney general race. Now, this is a person who's ultimately going to be responsible for enforcing laws of the state of Virginia against people who stand accused of crimes. How can a person, morally or ethically, now point the finger of accusation against a person when they themselves have already advocated political violence against a political foes, and not only to the foe itself, but to the family members of the person? That just doesn't sit well with me. What do you think?
I don't sit well either. If you think about it, if they're going to be like that during a race and then they get in a position like that, what's going to change? Maybe they're going to continue to be that way towards the people they're representing, which you see that in a lot of races. You see that in a lot of positions. They act like they're better than you, or they treat you like crap. And I feel if they do it at home or do it against a political opponent, what's not going to stop them when they're in a very, how we put it, leverage position? Mm-hmm. That's the word I can use. Leverage. You know what I'm saying? It means now they're in a position that they can really screw with your life. And I don't go for that.
I think when you talk about screwing with somebody's life, I see it manifesting in two ways. I see, number one, selective enforcement. I'm going to look at a person and I'm going to make the determination as to whether or not I'm going to bring charges, or I'm going to bring this case to a grand jury and indict them. I mean, that's ultimately what the prosecutors do, is they compile information that goes to a grand jury, and the grand jury returns an indictment to determine whether or not that person will or will not stand criminal charges. And so the power that a prosecutor has, and certainly the attorney general, is the ability to select which cases are going to go to a grand jury for potential indictment and which ones aren't. So that's selective enforcement. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is kind of the flip side of that selective enforcement, which is now engaging in outright lawfare, where now we are going to accuse a political opponent of a crime and then go out and find the evidence that substantiates the allegation that we levied against that political opponent. That's what we saw the Biden administration doing and Biden Department of Justice doing. It was the weaponization of the government in a full lawfare attack against political opponents and conservatives and Christians and Republicans. So I just see that happening in a state like Virginia, where now you have a person of that ilk, of that mindset, who is in the position to make the determination as to who gets the attention of state-level law enforcement and who doesn't.
Yeah, scary thought, isn't it? Like we see that, like for example, when I ran for mayor, we saw that within the party too. People use their position to leverage. It's a big club and you ain't in it. You don't play by their rules. You get, if you're not being trashed on, you get pushed aside. Thank goodness I didn't get trashed on, but we got pushed aside faster than, Biden shit in his pants. You know what I'm saying? So when you look at these people using those positions to leverage their way in, or weasel their way in would be a good word, and political stance of the party, you gotta look at it from the bottom up. Who's pulling the strings? Who's in charge? Because those are the ones that are doing what, everybody else is going to yes sir, no sir crap. I don't go for that. When I ran for our council in a prominent Democrat region, the goal was to get people that option to see there's better out there, and there's people who really want to do something for people, not the party. I didn't run for the party. Of course, that doesn't make friends at the same time, but I don't care. I'm not doing it for the party. But yeah, you're right. When you look at every position on both sides and you use that political strategy for left, and then they want to deny it with the evidence in their face, it's just bottom line crooked. I mean, politics is crooked. You know, and good people like me or anybody trying to run and do things well, it's hard on them. And they use that their position to put you in your place or make you look bad, and even though you're doing the best you can to look good. I guess that makes sense.
I think the major problem with a lot of these big city races and a lot of these deep blue areas is that you find a lot of old establishment Republicans that prioritize being a part of the club or the ego game more than they want to win. It's more about the who's in the big boys club, the good old boys club, rather than whether or not we can actually save America, win the seat, and accomplish anything good for the people who elect us. And if it's an ego game, then you shouldn't be in politics in the first place. And that's the problem with the New York GOP. That's the problem with a lot of these big major cities. And on top of it, a lot of them don't get the state backing and don't get the federal backing to get decent infrastructure in order to win these seats. A lot of these seats are not, you're not going to win them the first time you run a candidate. And a lot of these smaller seats, city seats, so on and so forth, you need to run somebody for these seats every single time without failure with serious backing in order to make a long-term dent. The first few times, you're just going to be forcing the Dems to have to spend money. But later on, as you keep showing up and you keep having a presence and you keep giving people an alternative and a voice and remembering that you have to run for the seat in the area that you're running, which means, you're not going to be able to run a Caroline Leavitt in downtown New York City. That's just not going to happen. You have to run somebody who can actually win that seat, and that means, you're going to have to pick somebody who's a little bit more moderate, maybe a little bit less MAGA, but as long as they understand the electorate, they understand the voters, and they can pose a reasonable alternative to the socialism, the far left progressivism that we're seeing in a lot of these major cities, you're going to be able to make a dent as long as they get out on the ground and is not a social media campaign bent on personal fame or on just being a part of the good old boys club in that town, in that city.
Oh, you're absolutely right. 100%. And it's nice though, like, okay, our party chair, back at that time, when I met with him, he knew I was running for the council seat. The original party chair was running for mayor, actually offered me to take over a council seat and back out of running for mayor. In hindsight, I should have taken it, to be honest with you, because I've been on the council. But we were going, we were trying to make a statement by running for mayor. But long story short, if your chair isn't supportive, and that's what happened. He met with me and he's like, "Oh, we're going to support our incumbents, but then screw the rest of you." But they didn't run anybody on any of the other council seats, just the incumbents, and it was two of us running on opposite seats in different districts trying to help build that, and lost. But we didn't even get there any support, not even get our name, at least for me, get your name out there more so. I just looked him in the eyes. It's the same bullshit story he told me when I was running for mayor. So then our new chair is worse, MIA. So if you're not running people aren't going to know that there are better options out there. And when you're raising funds, that's hard enough. And so you don't have even the party doing the minimum. This so-and-so is running in this district. Here you go. He's a Republican or she's a Republican. Vote. It doesn't help. And then you can't get people out to vote. And then you got this nonsense Democrat crap going on, and they just don't care. It's hard to get that message out when you don't have a supportive leadership. So that's why my next run, we're not looking at Marion County. We're going outside Marion County. We got a lot of support outside of Marion County. So we're going that route.
So this leads me to, so I want to preface this because I want to explain this and qualify this so the average Republican understands. AOC won her seat with about 16,000 votes. She knocked about 10,000 doors in order to get those 16,000 votes. She beat an incumbent that had been in that seat, if I remember correctly, like 30 years. That guy underestimated her, and because he underestimated her in her grassroots game, she was able to beat him. We could have put up a candidate that could have got more than 16,000 votes in that general election in order to win. There are more than 16,000 Republicans in that district. Those Republicans had nobody to vote for. And a lot of the seats that we lose to Democrats around the country in a lot of major cities are because we don't even have a candidate on the board. And while often enough we'll sit there and go, oh, well, you get what you voted for, you can't vote for somebody who's not even on the ballot. You can't vote for somebody when there is no other option. That's like saying, all right, you can choose option A or option B. All right, well, what is option B? We don't have an option B, but it's your fault for choosing option A. Well, you didn't give me an alternative, so this is what I got. So I'm now in a lot of these major cities, you're looking at the real game, the real election is not the general election. It's the primary, and it's the Democrat primary, because we're not even on the battlefield. The reason we've lost this country is because we're not even on the intellectual battlefield. The reason we lost the culture of this country is we're not on the cultural battlefield. The reason why we lose so many cities is because our ethos is to run away. We told American citizens for decades to run away from the cities. And then we wonder why the cities get bluer and bluer and bluer and bluer. Well, the Democrats, they came for your school boards and you ran. They came for your city councils and you ran. They came for the mayor's seat and you ran. They came for your state and you ran. You went to the suburbs. Guess what? They followed you to the suburbs. Then you went to Texas. You went to blue state or red states. And guess what? They followed you there too. They've taken over because our ethos is to run away and theirs is to constantly keep gaining ground. And guess what? The death, poverty, and destruction, the systemic racism that's really Marxism at its core has permeated. They've perfected their death, poverty, and destruction, and now you can't run fast enough, and they've gotten it into your children through the education system and popular culture. There's nowhere left to run. At what point do you sack up and start fighting?
Mm-hmm. Chris, let me ask you this, and I'm going to ask both of you guys this. Do you think, as you just mentioned, the Carolyn Levitt in downtown New York, do you think MAGA, as we've known it, is dead?
No. To a degree, yes, and to a degree, no. The problem with most MAGA candidates is it's not good enough to just be MAGA. They have to say Trump's name every 30 seconds. When you're running on somebody else's record, guess what? You get all their negatives, but you don't get most of their positives. In Caroline's race, one of the problems that I saw up here, and this is not necessarily Caroline's fault as much as it is rhetorically how we run campaigns in general. Talking more about the brand of the Republican Party or the brand of MAGA, then you talk about what you're going to do for the people who are electing you. There has to be a value added proposition for why I'm voting for you. Mm-hmm. So it's one thing to say, I support Trump, but my name is Julian Aciard and I'm going to be running for this seat. And here's my plans for how I can best represent you to solve the issues that you have brought to me as your prospective representative in Congress. And here's the solutions that I have. Not just here's where the Democrats have done you dirty, but here's my alternative and how I will do better for you. Because calling out the left doesn't do you any good if you're not proposing an alternative. And you are not an alternative unless you can explain how you're any better than them. That's the problem. The MAGA brand itself is toxic if all you're doing is saying MAGA, 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 MAGA in order to make it through a primary, and then you have no message outside the primary. And that's our problem, is we spend the whole primary running to the right, who can be more MAGA in order to get the money from Trump and to get the endorsement and everything. And then after the primary, what happens? Now you spend the entire general election having to answer for everything you did in order to run so far to the right that you beat everybody else. When in reality, you need to spend the entire time thinking about the general election. Your message, you can always add things to your message as you get further and further and you start to talk to independents and stuff like that. But you can never subtract from your message. Otherwise, you're double speaking and you're walking backwards. Mm-hmm. Now we can't trust you anymore.
Yeah, we didn't during our mayor race. The only thing that helped there was great. Mary Mills got me out on Channel 13 on the news 2 weeks prior to the election. That's what I think gave us a little edge because people I'm like, oh wow, who's this guy? And she put me in a good light where, like, say the Indy Star, who's left leaning, barely did, or anybody else, but we were really out there and getting our message out the best we could. She did help, and then I was also Ubering at the time, which was kind of cool because you got to meet your constituents or people or whatnot, and people were impressed that here's an average guy who wants to try to do something better with the city. Even though deep down I knew we probably wouldn't win it, but it was worth giving it that shot, which did help when we were running for the council seat. But we found a lot of people. This is where you learn a lot in your politics and district. We found a lot of people within our district that 4,100 vote Democrat and almost 900 vote Republican, which I got the most Republicans ever have in my district. But then you start seeing demographic. So you got to also look at that, because most people around here, they vote straight ticket Democrat. Yes, or straight ticket Republican, but that don't help either. So our goal is to try to get people to realize there are better out there. Like the next chair, we have a better shot because it's 90-something% Republican where I'm looking to run. So hopefully it will get me in. But and I made it good with businesses. Businesses loved me. They were like, oh my God, here's a guy who really, he wants to stop this blue line, red line crap destroying our business. He wants to really step up, make things stronger, better for all of us the best we can. And so I still have support. But you're right. If you go in with this and this and this and don't have anything to back it, and then you go in and say you win that spot, and then you go into the general, they're like, wait a minute, you said this. It will make it look bad, and you can lose.
I think a big problem is the lack of definition of what is MAGA. Right? Make America Great Again is a great slogan. Yeah. But MAGA went from being about America first and putting American citizens first and the average American first to being about who can support Trump the most. Mm-hmm. And rhetorically, that sounds great when you want to get a Trump endorsement, but it's not enough. For the MAGA movement to become something that is going to last the test of time, it needs to be about America first. Mm-hmm. Vivek had a post this week, and I think if the MAGA movement wants to mean anything, here's what it needs to do. First, in order to last beyond this election cycle and not just be a pendulum swing before the left takes back over again, 1, lower home ownership costs by slashing property taxes. 2, lower electric bills by producing more energy. 3, lower house prices by building more housing. 4, lower inflation by cutting excess government spending. How do you cut excess government spending? As an expert that came on the show said, you need to stop the amount of resources going to the federal government, because the government is not going to stop spending unless it has less money to spend. Mm-hmm. Agreed. Then that's how you make the American dream affordable for the average American. Once you do that, everybody's on board with America first. Then, very simply, stop lying to people. Stop putting foreign interests, and I mean all foreign interests. I don't give a shit whether it's Qatar or whether it's Israel. If you're prioritizing sending money to any country other than America, if everyone in Congress has no problem sending money abroad, but then we have to fight for it here as American citizens, if you're a Democrat and you're an American, I care about you. You're a Republican, you're an American, I care about you. You're a socialist, a communist, a libertarian, and you're an American, I care about you. And you are my priority. If you are anyone outside this country, I don't care if you get wiped off the face of the earth tomorrow. If every American citizen is doing just fine, has houses, has food, has clothes, has a job and opportunity to wrest the stars out of the heavens by the strength of their own back and the sweat of their own brow, then I care about you.
Part of the problem, though, Julian, is the people that you're saying that you care about care more about, and we just saw this as the example of the shutdown, that you have the Democrat Party that is more interested in the political capital that comes with ingratiating themselves with illegal immigrants. That's what this shutdown was about.
The Republican is cares more about ingratiating themselves with the lobbyists in D.C. from the military industrial complex,
you're not going to find
and
any
big pharma and the media and their own personal aggrandizement, their own personal advancement. I don't give a shit whether you're Republican or Democrat. If you're an American citizen, I want America to be great for all Americans. And we can disagree on the political prescription subscription for America. But if I can get to a point where I can lower the cost for every American, guess what? I'm going to bring the vast majority of America onto America First, onto MAGA. If I can make school and education and houses and drugs and education better for every American, most people are going to join MAGA. If we continue the rhetorical political gangbanging that we continue to do every election cycle of Bloods and Crips, political Bloods and Crips, and we're going to keep playing this game, guess what? Nothing's going to get done because we're spending more time trying to rack up wins against the other basketball team or the other asshole on the other side of the aisle than we are racking up wins for the American citizens.
I can't take issue with anything that you're saying, Julian, because you're 100% correct, and that's one of the reasons why you have heard me say I hate them all. I do. I hate them all. There are very, very few. First of all, there are very few Democrats that I would actually want to sit across a table and break bread with. There are very few Republicans that I believe in the message that they preach. And I've told you, and certainly our producer has seen many, many instances where, I've walked into interviews with people, and I'm like, you're not getting a curveball here. You're not getting anything. I'm actually going to be hostile to you because I want to see if you can't handle a heated conversation with somebody who shares your views, or at least ostensibly what you purport to embrace, then you sure as hell are not going to be able to stand up against the people who want to literally, in many instances, see you dead. And that's the thing. Democrats, listen, there's no question about it. Democrats consistently call for acts of actual political violence against their political opposition. Make no mistake about it. They want to see you dead.
And when I say Democrats, I'm talking about American citizens. I want American citizens as a whole to be doing great. If you're not an American citizen, I don't give a shit about you. When I say America first, I mean Americans first. And when it comes to politicians, I don't consider a lot of politicians to be Americans because I watch them turn Americans, betray Americans at the turn of a dime.
All right, so my knee-jerk reaction, Chris, and I want to ask you this, and I'm going to ask your opinion on this because I want to get Julian's take on this as well, too. My knee-jerk reaction is to say the same way you feel about those people are the same way that I feel about American citizens who are counter-tribalist. But then I have to stop and say, but wait a minute. Is it genuinely their fault, or are they doing exactly what they were programmed to do? Chris, your thoughts on that? If you see somebody who is a counter-tribalist, who is trying to use all of the tools available to them as an American to destroy the American way of life, are they truly to blame, or are they simply doing exactly what they were programmed to do?
I'm going to say a little bit of both, but I'm going to lean on the program because people, it seems like when you watch the people, how they act and respond, they are being fed by media, which we already know is owned by the left. They're being fed by, that's why we do these kind of programs. And they're also being fed by average, everyday morons out there that are trying to, act like influencers, we'll call them, on social media. They fall for this crap. So instead of thinking for themselves and going, I've got this ability to grow in this American dream, they use that like, I'm going to live off of the government forever. Well, you're already being a socialist. So why do you want to live off of welfare and live off all that crap forever? That's only supposed to be a stepping stool to help get you off of there and get you back on track. Or you use that, we have the freedom of speech and we have these, but then you use it to hate on us or call out these people and want them dead, like we talked about earlier in the show. So you got that fine line. So my thought is they're being programmed to do this, and very few, if at all, are doing it because they really want to, if they're true American citizens.
I think the average person who espouses, who acts as you just said, the average person, from what I can see, who acts as you just said, most people don't want to just live off the government. Most people want to be able to build themselves a lifestyle that they're happy in, that they enjoy, to the degree that they believe that they can build it. The left has spent 100 years marching through our institutions, through the culture, through the education system, and in every way trying to get a proletariat revolution. The fastest way to get a proletariat revolution in a society where there is so much opportunity is to make and convince people that the opportunity isn't there. Hide the rungs on the ladder to success so people will settle for government dole. And if you can disenchant people enough to where they'll accept what you have in your hand rather than accept all the possibilities that are out there and make them not believe that they have opportunity, you'll get the proletariat revolution, because you'll get the squalor, you'll get dependency.
So is it because America has not maximized opportunity, or Americans have not been allowed to maximize opportunity, that the argument that America isn't great is easier for the left to run with?
Yes, it's a combination of both. I think that's exactly it. And as Republicans marketing liberty, marketing opportunity, why are we not the ones marketing opportunity? I very rarely hear Republicans say, I want great opportunity for every American. I want you to be able to accomplish the impossible.
It's pretty hard to convince a person that America is bad when they're actually succeeding and winning and living the American dream. But I mean, the allure of socialism to a lack of critical thinking millennial, I can completely understand why they're a target audience for these people. We're coming up here on quarter past the hour. We went about 15 minutes over because I wanted to massage this topic adequately. Chris Moore, I want to thank you so much for jumping on. Chris Moore, the host of Your Voice, Your Call, every Saturday from 10 p.m. until midnight. For those of you who aren't old and go to bed at 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday. Patriot Soapbox Network, just Google that, and you can find Chris's show. Chris, always a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for jumping on. Let's do it again soon.
Oh, I appreciate it, dear guys, and thank you. That's a great discussion. Yeah, check it out over there. You can find the PSP logo and 24/7 outlet. We're also doing standalone coming up real soon. And Keith, I gotta get you on my soon too, brother.
Anytime. We'll definitely do it. Thanks, Chris. Take care. Be well. All right, Julian. Great show. Thank you, as always. And to everybody, thank you for tuning in. Share your thoughts, GraniteStateLive@gmail.com. Good, bad, or indifferent. Let your voice be heard. Again, GraniteStateLive@gmail.com. We'll be back here next week, Tuesday at 7 p.m. to do it all over again. Until then, stay safe, be well, and remember, civility does work. Be nice to one another. God bless everybody.
Happy Veterans Day, everybody. Make sure to join the Ram TV Live family. Veteran-owned and operated.
We are out.